Politics 101, whether you're in Guyana or in the Eastern Caribbean, the wider Caribbean, North America, Europe, wherever you are, welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. As we prepare to do today's program, we of course have Haiti on our minds, the developments there over the last 24 to 48 hours have been disturbing. Haiti has been in the news a lot, always in the news, and it seems that in that country, one tragedy after the other seems to visit our brothers and sisters there. So we want to dedicate tonight's program to the Haitians as they fight another setback. This time blood again flowing in Port-au-Prince, not for the first time, political upheavals. When will it end? When will it end? When will it end? We want to talk tonight about the issue of land, ancestral lands. As you would know, after emancipation, Africans pooled their resources, meager resources that they earned during the period of 1834 to 1838, the apprenticeship period. And in one of the biggest entrepreneurial blow, they bought lands and turned those lands into communities, into villages, which in turn transformed the coast of Guyana from the wild coast, where they bought and sold people and killed people, into a living space, a living space. They bought those lands with their own money, their own toil, their own sweat. And since then, the question of land and the African has always been at the forefront of the discourse in Guyana. They bought their lands, they pooled their money and they say, are we going to buy them? Are we going to buy them? And they bought their lands. And they buried their neighbor's string on their lands. That is why they call them ancestral lands. The lands where they left Africa and they left land in Africa. And they were always concerned about land. Local land, what their God country, they used to say. And are we go buy them? Are we go buy them? And they bought their lands. And ever since, they've had to fight. They've had to fight. African Guyanese have had to fight to retain their lands. They've had to fight the state, the colonial state. They've had to fight against others. Some of the lands were repossessed. In a place like Guyana, land is important land. Without land, you're nothing. Only a couple of weeks ago, last week, a couple of brothers from the WP and myself went to the Namstel. We were called by the people at the Namstel over the use of a piece of ancestral land. They want their land to be used for housing. Their foreparents bought those lands. But the government seems to have other plans for the lands. They want to bring cattle farmers in the Namstel to graze their cattle on the people's ancestral land. Brother Dion Abrams, Brother Kidaki Amsterdam, and Brother Tokumo Ogunsi and I were there. Village Voice went in and they did a big story on that issue. We are now hearing that on the quarantine, Africans are having problems there with their lands. We know that on West Bobis, Brother Lincoln Lewis, who is going to be on this program, has single-handedly fought to repossess the land of his ancestors. He's now in court for trying to defend that land, those lands. Land. Look at land where they God country. That's what our foreparents say. And we go buy them. I'm stressing that because those lands were not given to Africans. They bought them. And they bought them in the name of their ancestors. Those who died on the Middle Passage, those who died on the plantation, those lands that were bought in their name, ancestral lands, sacred lands. And we go buy them. And we go buy them. The title of the program tonight is, why are they messing with ancestral lands? Why are they messing with ancestral lands? Our Amerindian brothers and sisters made a deal at the time of independence to get land, and they were given land. They are referred to as the first people to have settled here. And yes, they were entitled to land. Our East Indian brothers and sisters were given land adjacent to the sugar estates. And they were entitled to land. Africans bought their land, bought them land. As we would say, we buy them land. We buy them. We buy them. So tonight we want to visit that question of ancestral lands. Why those lands are always in dispute. While we were in the Namstel, Dion Abrams, who is on this program, made a passionate plea to the people of the Namstel. Nobody must come here and take your land because I will buy them. Brother Simpson de Silva, an agriculturist, obviously, if you're into agriculture, you are concerned about land. And he's a member of IPADG, the umbrella organization that is set up to commemorate the International Decade of the People of African Descent, IPADG. He's a member of that organization. He's a member of other organizations. He's a tireless fighter to own land, to repossess the lands of our ancestors. So I want to welcome these three brothers, Brother Simpson de Silva, Brother Dion Abrams, he's a member of the WPA, a village activist, and Brother Lincoln Lewis, General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, but tonight he's appearing here as an African activist who is concerned about Africans repossessing their ancestral land. We have found oil, and wealth is going to come from oil. But oil comes and oil goes. Oil comes and oil stops. We still need our land. Welcome to tonight's program. Welcome to tonight's program. And let others know that we're on tonight and we're talking about African ancestral lands. Simpson, let me start with you. why in 2021? Why in 2021, 103 years after emancipation, we are still talking about possessing our ancestral lands? Why are we still talking about this? Why is it not a given that we have our lands and we farm our lands and we live on our lands? Why are we having to talk and quarrel about our lands 183 years after emancipation?
Thank you, Dr. Hines, for the question. And I think it's rather unfortunate that still at this time we are facing these kinds of problems. But as you said it, land is power. Land empowers us. Land is our birthright. The land that our ancestors bought, are unique and they are our inheritance. And fortunately, it was done like that, and it should not be interfered with unless we feel we should use it for some specific purpose agreed by us. So for me, we ought to make sure that our lands are not taken away, and those that were taken away, that somehow they be restored to us, because it's the legacy not only for us, but is our children and our children's children. That was the intent. And what I find as you go and speak to people in all parts of Guyana, you find you're having the same challenge. People of different race, unfortunately, are using all kinds of methodologies to get the land. I was talking to an 85-year-old man today from the Pomeroon, and he, through a brother, person of African descent, aligned with a person from another race to take his land away, and not small acreage, but as much as 1 to 500 acres. And we know that a lot of those lands out there, they're sitting on oil and gas. Fortunately, legal battles were pursued and they were able to get back some, but some they did not get back. Barbies, the same problem. Demra, the same problem. Every day you speak to brothers and sisters, you're hearing the same thing. I would like to call upon us as a people, and not just a few of us, but together as people of African descent, to let the world know, starting within our communities, then regionally, nationally, and internationally, that we must not be robbed of those lands. The lands are there so that we can get opportunities. If we do not have land, we would not be able to benefit from the sustainable development of our communities. We have just seen in yesterday's paper and for the last week and coming, where the Amerindians are pursuing vigorously the sustainable development of their communities. And we just saw where they would be receiving 110 tractors, which is a good thing. 32, I think, were handing over, and they're pursuing vigorously the sustainable development of their communities on those lands or in those communities. The same way, we need to be parallelly working on the sustainable development, not only sustainable agriculture development, but the holistic development of our communities vigorously. There are all kinds of possibilities that exist nationally and internationally. But if we do not own the land, if we do not have the land, when we do not have a chance. And I'm saying that apart from the land that our ancestors bought, which are called ancestral lands, we, as people of African descent, should go after lands that belong to Guyanese, because there are many people who do not have ancestral lands and need land for housing, for agriculture, for industrial development, for all kinds of things. And it is very important that we come together now. This is not for later. It's about what should happen now. We educate one another. We bind together in unity and call on the government to do what is right, which is to respect the ancestral lands and to give us more land so that we can cultivate. That is my specific position on the current. One other thing. I think the ancestral land should all come under protected areas, because those lands are unique, they're special, and we should lobby for them to be protected so that never ever should anyone try to steal and cheat and marginalize and discriminate against our people.
Never, 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 never. You talk about the government. The Granger government, to its credit, did set up a commission that heard from a lot of people on this question of ancestral land. And one of those persons who gave testimony before that commission is was Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln, you're from West Bobis. The land issue there is very, very big. Tell us, Simpson talked about lands being stolen from us, taken from us. Tell the audience how these lands in West Bobis, in particular, how were they really stolen from the people who are the owners of those lands? We're not hearing you. We want to unmute yourself.
Yeah. You're hearing me now?
Yes.
Let me start by saying that the lands were, what happened here is that many persons of African descent were not conscious of what was taking place and what has taken place over time. You know, in my own case, I had a situation where I had a great grandmother who came from Belladrum. And I remember as a little boy, about 3+, I clamored to go to school. I was with my grandmother in Belladrum, in 28. I was clamoring to go to school, and they sent me to a school, a little school run by a lady. We used to call her Teacher Rita. She was a belle. 28 used to get plenty water. And I went with my slate. And every day I go much show by Titi, with stars. She was in her 90s then, I presume. She said, look, this day when I was going home, I fall off the bridge. That was the time when water coming in and going out tide coming in every day and go to 28. And I fall off the bridge, so I had no star for me to give to Baititi. So I start crying, and when I go, she hold me and she put my head down in her lap, and she raised up, she wiped my face, she said, Brandon, don't cry. You're gonna be a bright little boy. One thing I'm gonna beg you, never let them sell and buy Jamaica land. I remember that. It's stuck in my brain unto today. Let me tell you what has happened. There are a number of persons on the West Coast of Bobbies where people who bought the families that bought estates. But there were people who left the estates after they left the estates in the 1930s, right? And they were looking for places to live. And there were people who rented like a piece to them. And while they may have rented a piece to them, what they did is that they, after time when the people who rented, person or persons who rent a piece to them may have died, they stop paying rent and they start to encroach on what exists. And they didn't only encroach, they put their children to live on it. They bring their brothers and sisters to live on it, giving the impression that the land belonged to them. When, in fact, those lands remain in the books as the lands of some specific families. What we did not do is to stand up. Some of the generations before us did not stand up and have things corrected. We allow people. In one case, let me give you an example. My uncle gave to a man, help him to get the permission to build his house on a piece of ancestral land. And today the man giving us hell. He's claiming that all the land belongs to him. You know? It is that type. What we did was to use our good nature to help people. And as you help them, you were helping them for them to make life better. But they were there to take away what you have, what belongs to your family. It's a different situation. We approach it different. We other people approaches different to the other people, the other persons who encroach on our estates. So we are now, let me tell you what. The land, in the case where you see me advocating, it didn't start now. It didn't start now. The advocacy did not start now. It started in the early 60s, where my great uncles and their cousins had surveyed that land, and some residents stopped the transport, went to court and stop the transport from passing. In the early 60s, mid 60s, I remember very well Donald Robinson, God bless the dead, was the lawyer who was pursuing this matter. So when people come now to tell you or make the point that they were there all the time, they were never there, so many of them. But they see land as something that as collateral, that they can go to the bank and they can raise money and they can make their lives better. While to a large extent, our people who may have lands too can go to the same bank with the best plan to raise money for some form of investment, to make life better for them, for their families and their communities. So the issue of ancestral land, while they have had a commission that was established by Mr. Granger, and that commission may have done some work, it may have put in a report. We need to go beyond that. There must be a red line. Ancestral land must be
What happened to the report? What happened to the report?
I don't know what happened to that report. I am trying to get a copy of this report, and I'm not getting a copy of it. But I'm saying to you that this thing there must be a red line.
Yes.
Ancestral land, we must make it very clear, the African community will make it very clear to every politician that we will not countenance them using state resources to confiscate ancestral land and give it to anybody.
Yes, Simpson is saying that ancestral land should be protected land. Where you stand on that, Lincoln?
I believe it should be protected, but I don't know. I don't want it to be protected um, under an authority that is vested in a state that politicians can activate easily. They must be protected, and they must be returned to the families who
Okay. All right.
purchase those lands.
Yes. Dion Abrams, let me bring you in here. You operate on the East Coast. I know you are very active because you're a part-time farmer. You may dispute that and say you're a full-time farmer now. I wouldn't want you to get into problems with the Ministry of Education. So I'm calling you a part-time farmer. But you've been involved in the whole land issue. How the stealing of the land has manifested itself there in the East Coast. You have to unmute.
Like Lincoln and Dr. Simpson de Silva, the question of our ancestral lands is one that really should be looked at in a deep way. And let me deal a bit with what you asked, Lincoln, in terms of protection of the lands. There was an issue with a piece of land in Friendship on the east bank of Demerara. Friendship, if you check the history, is a plantation that was bought by Africans. And there was a businessman from another race who took a portion of the land of Friendship and converted it to his own use. There was a legal battle in relation to those lands. But on the Jagdeo, what has transpired is that the people eventually, I think they did not get back the land. But to protect the land that belongs to the state, the PPP on the Jagdeo passed legislation to say that you cannot have prescriptive rights to land that belongs to the state. I was trying to, I didn't get a time to because I got a notice late. I wanted to get the newspapers and so on where that account was. But there was no such legislation for lands that belong to the African people. Because what Jagdeo knows is that a lot of these lands, and we see it happening right now in Denamstel, that a lot of these lands are unoccupied. And in many instances, efforts have been made and continue to be made to take possession of these lands. If we were to go through the coast of Guyana and we were to examine many of the places that we see seem to be of a different nature, different culture, and we check the history, we will understand that these places really have been transformed. Check Parika, for instance. Many people may not know that Parika is a village that belonged to Black people. And if you take that stretch of road running along the bank of the Essequibo going right down, an abundant number of those villages along that stretch, along the bank of the Essequibo River going way down, are African villages bought by African people. But many of them are being transformed. And like Lincoln said, it's a matter of education because somehow we get the impression that the people who came after their ancestors bought those lands somehow do not have the same kind of interest and energy to fight to maintain those lands, to keep it in their possession, to understand the value of those lands. And so people have been taking it away from them and using it for their own benefit. The kindness of our people is something that we cannot overlook. Lincoln mentioned that in many instances, and it happened there in Buxton too, if you check, a lot of the people who are living on lands in Buxton are not living on lands that belong to them. Because when you check the transport and so on, my generation, for instance, I found an old transport, an old type with a whole set of lands in it. When I went to investigate the people, one of the guys said, "My buddy, me no know nothing but land. Me grow up here with my grandfather. He build your house here, I will come live here, but I will never know who the land belong to or whatever." So our old people had a way of being kind to other people, you understand? And that kindness was taken advantage of. But today, it's not only kindness, it's bullyism that is taking place and a concerted effort to deprive us of what rightfully belongs to us. And that is where the struggle is right now, to make us understand the importance of land and to make us understand that what we have lost and what we can repossess, that we need to fight to do so.
Let me ask you this, Dion. You mentioned state lands and ancestral lands and something Jack Dio did.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the government took possession of ancestral lands as and turned them into state lands, or claim that ancestral lands are
That's
state lands?
Lincoln, you know about the friendship issue. It was a private person, but you know these people have a way of being close to the agents of the state. All right, and what I'm saying that the legislation sought to protect what belonged to the state and excluded what belonged to the villages, lands that were bought. If you wanted
Yeah.
to protect lands, then you should ensure the Amerindians have protected areas. So why is it that you're going to protect the state lands and then leave out lands that you know that our foreparents bought with their hard-earned sweat, you know, and the cash that they eked out on this very, very, very harsh conditions, right? It's a deliberate act, all right? Because what happens, this question of prescriptive rights is something that we really need to fight against and to have that whole thing changed, because it's by that means that we have lost a whole lot of our lands to people, right? And we have to fight against that. But unless we
Simpson,
take this, yeah, go ahead.
Simpson, let me bring you in, Simpson. Um, you call for the protection of lands. Expand on that. Elaborate. How does that protection work?
That should be taken in two phases, and I would like to inject another little element where we remember in the days of Forbes Burnham when some ancestral lands were taken up for the sugar estates, and ancestral lands were taken up for President's College and so on. I think the fact that some of the sugar estates that are no longer in operation, at least those lands which were ancestral lands that were given to the state, should return to the people who own those lands.
Like which and which estate ancestral lands were taken
At
with.
this time, I would not like to get into specifics of which
Okay.
and which estate,
Okay.
but that we accept the principle that those estates that were closed, not functioning, and lands were taken up by the state, those lands should return to the people. who they belong to. That's one. And two, when I speak about the protection of our land, I'm speaking about the ones that we still have that are not affected necessarily, and those that are affected, and the ones that were taken by the state. All those lands, at least when I was at the Ministry of Agriculture and even at the Ministry of Communities, I recall that as long the people request that certain lands be protected, then the minister of that ministry use methods that are existing to get the protection. For example, let's say Buxton, Victoria, Denhamstel, Queenstown, and so on, Lancaster, Liverpool, Manchester. We know of lands that are surely ancestors' land. We know of a lot of these lands that our people, meaning people of African descent, tried to sell and couldn't necessarily sell. Some of them, when they couldn't sell, those are the younger people, they sold the soil. When things like that is happening, they should be stopped because they would fall under the protective area mechanism. And there are instruments or mechanisms that could be used, known by the legal experts. I'm not the legal mind on this. But over time, I was positioned in various ministries, and I've seen petition came in, and we were able to protect certain areas. And in addition to protection, they were given special financing to develop those areas, and they serve as models. I am saying that our ancestral lands, it's good enough to protect our heritage because we have tangible and intangible heritage that ought to be restored and protected. And I don't see with all good conscience of anyone, especially the way we normally speak about good governance, transparency, rule of law, and accountability, that we should apply those principles along the way, aggressively educate our people, and together as a team, all of us, we work towards the protection of our rights. It's a human right.
Simpson, let me pin you down to concrete things here. If people in Kilturn or number 51 on the quarantine have problems with ancestral lands and they want to repossess their land, what should they do?
I am saying, with the power of the people, you have petition, you band together, you have signatures, you have representation to the local government organ. You follow all the basic procedures, local, regional, and state, via organize.
So they must organize themselves.
Your rights.
They must organize themselves. That's the first thing. And they must make representation for the local government. Right. That's the first step. Lincoln, let me bring you in here because you are actively involved in repossessing your ancestor, your forebear, Kojo land. How have you gone about that?
We have started. We start to resurvey the whole place.
Resurvey, good.
Yeah, the entire place. Because in our case is that we were able to put our hand on the transport. We were able to put our hands on the transport. The original transport the transport that they had in the 60s, when Donald Robertson's office went up in flames some years ago, we lost that transport. But incidentally, we were able to go back to the registry and we were able to get a copy of it, of the documents. And we use that to do the surveys at Kingley. And we believe that we must move. If we want these things done, we gotta be moving vigorously to take possession. I don't allow, because I'll tell you what. In that specific case, is that Mr. Dandalal claim is the state land, and he's saying that we have no claim to it. But at the same breath, in the same breath, he say the people get transport for the transport for issues. You heard Simpson a little while ago talk about the law that was put in place to prohibit people from getting prescriptive rights on state land, state property. So what you're having is the double standards or the shenanigans that are taking place, where one time you say it's state land, the other time people can, the law say you can't get transport, you can't get prescriptive rights, you get transport through prescriptive rights, but you are making every effort to give that land to other people. This is what is of concern. And that's the reason why I said that the ancestral lands, they must be read. We must move vigorously to make sure that
we must move vigorously to make sure. Yeah. Welcome to tonight's program. If you're just joining us, we're dedicating tonight's program to the people of Haiti who are once again having to deal with tragedy among them. We 10 years ago, they had to deal with that massive earthquake, and they've continued since then to rebuild. They have not yet recovered from that. And now they're faced with this tragedy again, murder, bloodshed in Haiti. And we want to keep our brothers and sisters in Haiti on our minds, and to call on our governments to do whatever they can to help to bring some sort of normalcy to that country. They're suffering because they fought for our freedom. They struck the first blow for our freedom. We're going to take a short break, and we are going to remember Haiti in song. Remember Haiti in song. Mr. Operator, please. Let's remember Haiti in song. I don't think the operator is there. Full page operator. Full screen.
Independent, you were the first. Once to finish in the Caribbean. No, some swear that you are forever blessed. You were so first and rich, with acres of sugar cane, Lord. Now your fortunes have switched. No, it's storm and hurricane. Just when it takes. Your LEDs of the break. I see you're reeling on the brink, devastated by this earthquake. Haiti. Rescue Haiti. I see a mother so distressed, a hot dead child to her breast, so many homeless and mispossessed. Haiti. I see them digging with their hands, through the rubble and the sound. All good conscience now becomes guilty. I see big man break down and cry, asking me, Father, why so many thousands had to die. And from my heart there's one reply, now the praise have gone so high, let your kindness multiply. Rescue Haiti, Haiti, Haiti crying, Haiti crying, s'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît, Haiti crying. A resilient people and so brave. They rebelled and expelled mighty France, sent colonial masters to their grave. These black Jacobins of resistance, since then they have withstood Europe's infernal. Some thoughts like driftwood towards Miami shores, through trials and tribulations, they survived every test. Though this once proud nation is the poorest in the West. I see the palace dragon floors crumbling like dominoes. Man's vanity relics thrown. Children drifting in a death with a white and vacant face before they see their last face. Yes, we can play a part if we just give from our hearts. Help our brothers. So come on, don't hesitate. One day this could be your fate. Grow before it's too late. Come on, rescue Haiti. Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît, Haiti crying. Haiti's crying. S'il vous plaît, Haiti crying. Over 200,000 lost or dead. The figures keep growing day by day. Many rogue angels fear to tread through the streets of hell, city Soleil. There's poverty so dire, but that is the norm. They huddle wrong any fire, and nights just to keep warm. So people stop complaining. In comparison, we are blessed. For neighbors are truly paying. Open your treasure. I hear the urgent plaintive cries. I saw some daughters die like flies. From the ashes she must rise. Though she falls, she's standing still. Block by block, help her rebuild. Rescue Haiti. Through the horror and despair, as she shed so many tears, we must offer one simple prayer. Through the misery and the strife, the pain comes like a knife. We must repair his fractured life. Rescue Haiti, Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît. Haiti crying, Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît. Now we have been forced to turn our heads These signs of neglect can't fade away. In a world so greedy and overfed, nations live on 2 US a day. Till all the jungle is closely present dress. If it's real, if we bungle, carry comes and ready yet. She might have no money, culturally she's rich. She needs me help, not me pity, to get she out of this ditch. Rescue Haiti. I see predators in belly, Haitian orphans to enslaved, before child slavery reappear in Haiti. As US relief proceeds, we cannot be cold or weakly. Come, must take it, rescue Haiti. We have to draw the line in the sand. Don't go to US demand. Every carry complaint must land Haiti. She was battered and pauperized by European gunboats, colonialized. Caribbean, let's rise. Rescue Haiti. Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. It means help me. Help Haiti. S'il vous plaît, if you please. Haiti crying. Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît, Haiti crying, laissez-moi, Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît, laissez-moi, Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît, Haiti crying. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît.
Calypso voice of Kizzy Ruse. That calypso was sung after the hurricane. And it's so appropriate today. Haiti crying, rescue Haiti. When Haiti cries, all African people cry. Haiti's crying as we host this program, and when they cry, we cry. Kizzy Ruse, one of the young Calypsonians out of Trinidad, with that resounding memory, reminded us of our responsibility. As she said, carry come and ready yet. We Caribbean people, instead of rescuing Haiti, our own government is turning Haitians away. We have to raise our voices. Brothers, a short comment on what's going on in Haiti. Lincoln, I'll start with you. Lincoln, a short comment on what's going on in Haiti.
Let me tell you, we have to be concerned about what is happening there. There have been those people have carried on a relentless struggle for years against foreign domination and exploitation, exploiting of their resources and what have you. But let me say to you that they have blazed the trail. They have made it possible for us who have been able to garner, to kick down the walls of slavery, indentureship, colonialism, and moving on to Republican status. They have done it. They have led the way. We have to admire them. They have given us that energy and show us that light. But let me say to you, you see this CARICOM that has been established. I believe strongly when you listen, when you look what is happening in CARICOM, is that our leaders have lost their way. Definitely, they've lost their way. Um, I remember with one of the hurricanes. I can't remember which one it was specifically. I remember the Caribbean Labor Congress delegation was talking with heads, and a point was made. Like Goodley, who is now deceased, was head of the CCL at the time. They're making a point to them. You're making a point to them. Look, let us seek to see how we can resettle Asians in a very structured way in the region. And Guyana was one of the places that was identified. Um, the point that the CCL was making is, look, we can put the project up, a regional project, and you go to the UN and get the funding for resettlement of these people. They are very thriving, economic and thriving people. Bring them in, let them do, if it's farming or what. We were at the time they were talking that we are observing that, look here, our food bill, our external food bill, or importing into this region was something about 2 point something billion US dollars. And we were saying that, look here, if we are going to create the atmosphere where you can have food being produced in the region, and more so reduces that external debt burden on the backs of the citizens. Um, Let us, the concept was there. Let us develop the project for resettlement and so on. But I believe that that is all that happened. It died there after that discussion. Nobody did anything. But the Asian situation is critical. We do have what we call they don't even have a government right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
CARICOM spinning around.
Spin around. Yeah.
And you have a situation right now where even the leaders, all they do is play to the CARICOM leaders playing to the gallery. Nobody tried to help them. Why they don't try to help them? Because I don't know the reason. Like one president, I heard one president after the president was killed, he said, we need strict justice. Even the country that he's running, nobody get justice.
Right. Dion Abrams?
Right?
Dion?
Good.
Any comments?
Yes, David.
Mhm.
I think Haiti is tragic. Any situation where lives are lost in that way, I mean, it's tragic for the country. And historically, you mentioned the fact that Haiti blazed the trail for us in terms of freedom and so on. But the context in which people of Haiti have found themselves is one that we cannot overlook. The fact that the system continues to be manipulated by external forces that have driven the people to a point where they somehow feel that they have no alternative than to react violently to confront situations that they feel that they're not getting anywhere with, is one that we have to consider. Because, and we have to take it seriously, because if we look at the situation in Guyana, we are heading down the same road, right? And because the forces that are operating here is the same force that has Haiti where it is right now, and that is the United States of America, all right? And I mean, why is it, I mean, that you talk about CARICOM, that we don't have leaders now who are prepared to stand up and forcefully reject these interventions into our region that are creating problems for our people and that are leaving us with options that would lead to the situation in Haiti. It is really tragic. We don't have voices that are speaking up for us anymore. And even in Guyana, where we are under all these pressures, we are here as a result of a CARICOM that was complicit in acts that, led us to where we are. And in the face of the crises that we continue to face, there is no voice. And I guess the frustration of the people of Haiti, that is where we're led.
Where it led. Yeah. Simpson,
Yeah.
as you listen to Kissy Rose in that powerful calypso, what went through your mind? Mute.
Sympathy with what is happening in Haiti and is rather tragic. And what we need to do is surround our brothers and sisters from Haiti, help in whatever way we can, because their pain is our pain. What is happening in Haiti could happen in Guyana. And for me, what I concluded is that we should seize every opportunity as a people to come together and use the experiences internally and externally to make sure that ours is different. Ours struggle become a model. Because when I listen to her, I reflect on what is happening internally in Guyana by our own people.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our people are sabotaging us. Some of our people are operating as fronts, and we need to skin them up. We need to stop that from happening. And I know of a couple of cases where our lands are being sold to white folks, but they're bought through people of African descent from our own
Mm-hmm.
people for little or nothing. So we have to redouble our efforts here in a very organized way immediately to stop the hemorrhaging, to stop the maladies within our community. And we take what has happened in Haiti as impetus to make us understand clearly that is a serious battle. It is not a piece of cake, it's not a walk in the park. And within our own families, we're having challenges, and let us set out once and for all to try to set the records clear and do what is right. We owe it to not only ourselves, but our future generation. And use this opportunity about Agenda 2030 or 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development, and let us call for some serious action and solution at the community level for the sustainable development of our people. The same thing has to happen in Haiti and all the other countries in the different parts of the world. It is very, very serious times, and we need to put up our antennas and know the truth and deal with them appropriately as a group.
And I like the fact that all of you made reference to what is going on in Guyana, that if must we stand with the people of Haiti, we have to protect our own country from going down the road of the Haitians. Dion Abrams was quite blunt. You know, the Americans went into Haiti in 1915, did not leave until 1934. They seized all the assets, they seized gold from the treasury in Haiti. They the American soldiers took over the country. And they give my own experiences here last year with external intervention. We have to look at Haiti and we see that what is happening today in Haiti goes right back to when the French turned up in 1824, along with American support, and demanded that the Haitian people repay the French because the Haitian people want their freedom. And they have to repay over $30 billion of today's money. Walter Rodney wrote the book of Europe underdeveloped Africa. And it could be of France and the United States underdeveloped Haiti. And that underdevelopment in Haiti is what accounts for the kinds of misery that we see among our brothers and sisters there. So we stand with our brothers and sisters in Haiti, and in doing so, we have to up the ante in protecting our country from going down that road. That is the message from here tonight. I'm going to do a full program on Tuesday, a full Politics 101 on Haiti. So stay tuned for that. As we wind down, you've been talking about the ancestral lands and the importance of land. Simpson De Silva, I want you to talk to our audience and explain to them why land in 2021 is important. Why repossessing lands that our foreparents bought is important. Why acquiring Balinese lands because they belong to us too is important. Talk to us.
I would like to, before specifically dealing with that, say to you that I have had the good fortune of traversing most parts of Guyana. And what I recognize that we have to have a very special educational program within the school system and within our organizations, civil society, private sector, media, government, to explain to the people of African descent the value of our land. Because within the next year or two, the price of land would go up exponentially. It is really very high right now, and people are trying to get our people to sell land at very cheap rate, technically at giveaway rate, apart from just stealing the land. And we have to make sure that that does happen, because within that land space, you have a lot of biodiversity, which has tremendous value as part of our natural resources. In other words, Guyana, the streets of Guyana are still paved with gold. The biodiversity, which is the plants and the animals and the insects that are within that space, they are very, very expensive products. Apart from the minerals, apart from oil and gas, just the green aspect of our space, we can make millions of US dollars per year. But what I found is happening, our people have been shying away from the land. So organizations like IPADG, your organization, and many other organizations, we need to send that clear message of the value of wealth in the land. Because when and if these lands are sold or are taken away, we would not have access to those lands. So we would not have access to the wealth. And when monies would be given out as grants and special loans at very low interest rate, we would not be able to benefit from that. So it's important that we understand clearly that the land we have now, we must possess the land. We must cultivate the land. We must work together as team, and we must include the diaspora. So where it comes, Guyanese and Guyana and Guyanese diaspora of people of African descent teaming up based on communities that people are from or otherwise, so that we can pool resources, financial and otherwise, for the development of these various communities. So the word to our people, do not sell the land,
Do
do
not
not
sell
sell
it.
the soil, do not allow people to steal the land. Let us get together and work as a team for the prosperity of our people. The time now is time for restoration, time for reclaim, time for to regain what was lost and claim or get more. So the value of the land, apart from the oil and gas, the green economy is where we as a people can be can own completely, totally, or jointly at reasonable good rates, rather than the kinds of rates that we're seeing, where in other industries we are getting little or nothing. We're barely getting crumbs. We deserve the slice. We deserve the land. The land is super, super important to us for
Thank you very much.
agriculture, fishery, mining, industrial development, housing development, and otherwise the biodiversity is very, very rich, and let us embrace it. Now,
Lincoln, lands in West Berbice are tied to rice cultivation. And part of the reason that some of our brothers and sisters in that part of the country were leasing their lands had to do with being pushed out of the rice industry. Am I correct? Explain to us the nexus between land and rice cultivation in West Berbice. You're on mute.
Yeah, the lands that are owned by African villages and people that are cultivated in rice, it is only about 10 to within 10 to 15% of those lands are being cultivated by people of African descent. One of the things we need to know that, and it needs to be encouraged, and this is why I always talk about formative action. Even in the rice industry, if you check between in Region 5 or check across the country, I do not believe you have more than about 2 rice millers or true rice mills that are owned by Africans.
Mm-hmm.
One in West Berbice, a small mill, just been put in place by Lambert Porter, who have been a remigrant. And all the other mills are being owned by other persons. Even the what you call the equipment for cultivation.
But Lincoln, explain the relationship between ownership of a mill and engaging in cultivation of rice and planting rice.
Let me just tell you this. If you cultivate, the men have been saying, African people who have been cultivating land has made it very clear to me. Why they had to get out is that if they combine, for instance, the combine may be owned by some other person of another origin. The combine may come next to them, cut the rice or harvest the rice for somebody next door to them. And then after that, they move away and tell them they will come back to cut theirs. And by the time they come back, is that the rice begin to fall. You understand me? The yield is not enough to cover the costs. And when they will go to the mill, they put them at the back there, and they when they finish grading the paddy, is that they owe the miller, because they may have taken fertilizer from that miller. You understand me? When you took out the price, the cost for the fertilizer and so forth, the man don't get anything. So they were forced then to just what we call rent their lands, and those lands they may get a $9 an acre or a $10 an acre, and 9 bags, in fact, 9 bags of rice paddy per acre, or 10 bags of paddy per acre. That's what you end up getting. So they were systematically pushed out of the rice industry.
What about credit? What about the millers giving credit or not giving credit? How does that affect them?
They may give them credit in the form of fertilizer, but you gotta sell the rice to them when you finish, right? And they will give you the price that they feel you should get.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the story.
So that's what if we're saying people in West Berbice should repossess their lands, what should they do with those lands? Should they plant other crops if it's difficult to get into rice planting because of these hurdles that they have to cross? What is the advice? Repossess your land and do
you may have what you need. You need somebody who can some person who can provide the fertilizer for them. You need more equipment to
Have we lost Mr. Lewis there?
By the time we get him back, David.
Yes, go ahead, Simpson.
We visited recently in that same region, and there's a movement by some young brothers. We are getting them to work together with older folks, and they have combined, they have tractors, and we put them in contact with millers of people of African descent. And situation is being worked out now for increased production of rice in that area. And we are pleased that it will work. Teams of us have been visiting the area and giving advice appropriately. There's some room for hope that it would gain momentum, and we should be in control to be part of the rice production industry in a big way, from production, rice processing, and export abroad to get reasonable price. That is being pursued at the moment.
Very good news, very good news. So there is still a future for Black people in rice cultivation in West Berbice and perhaps places like Essequibo. Dion, you were involved in agriculture there in the East Coast, in Buxton in particular. Is there a revival of agriculture among African Guyanese communities? I know the fellas in Buxton have been telling me that they've been increased in production. They're planting a lot of vegetables at the back there. We have a couple of boats that were donated to us, and they've been using at least one of the boats because the roads are not passable. Is there a revival of agriculture there?
Yes, David. As you know, the revival came about under the APNU government when they had the Rural Agriculture Development Project, and investments were made in the community along with Moko and Ithaca and so on for BV Triumph, drainage and irrigation, and putting infrastructure in place. And then they cleared 180 acres of land to encourage farmers and till it and did everything to encourage people to get back to the land. And the experience from that tells me that this argument that Black people don't want to farm is really one that is false. That if the opportunities are given to them, that they are going to get involved in agriculture. And there is a willingness. Many of the young people whom we thought would never have been interested, whom we probably thought would be sitting at the street corners and doing nothing, went down to that place there and are actually involved in cultivating crops and bringing out crops and doing work. All right. And the scope for expansion is there. And we envisage that as time goes by, that expansion is going to take place. And so we have already begun to bring out food. And soon we're going to be able to be a village that is feeding itself again, because we had that in our history. The decline in our agriculture only began in the 70s and so on, during the period of the hardships, because our farmers were still farming. I used to go to the background with my great grandmother, Aunt Emma, with my grandmother Estelle Sam, and we used to bring stuff out of there, boatloads. The
Yes.
company canal had boats, and so on. But our major problem right now, as you said, is the access to when the rain falls, it's absolutely terrible. And many of us really, you really can't bring your stuff out. You can't get in to do what you want to do. If we can have that access developed, then it's really going to take off. We've been to the Amstel, and the Amstel, we saw tractors, we saw the guys actually doing things.
Yes.
So it's not that it's not happening. It's happening,
Yes.
but we need to continue to encourage people to understand that farming is a means of livelihood.
Yes, and I'm glad to hear that. I know, as you said, the problem is getting the produce out from the back dam. Two boats were donated to us in Buxton, and we are working out ways in which those boats can be used. One is in use right now. If there's anyone in the audience who has a boat or a boat that they are not using, you want to donate to Buxton. There may be other villages that are in need, but I know of Buxton. Please contact me, because the farmers there, they're farming, they're producing. They just can't get the stuff out of the back dam. The roads are impassable because of the rains, so they have to depend on the canals to get the produce out. They don't have enough boats. There are two of them there. If you know of any boat, please contact me. So and can make a donation. That's one way you can actively support the resurgence of agriculture in African Guyanese community. We're going to pay our bills now. We're going to take a short break and do a PSA, and then we'll come back for closing statements from our panel.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.
And there you heard it. On Tuesday, we made a plea for donations. Two people I know of. Desiree, thank you very much for your donation. Andrea, you did contact me about how to make your donation in Guyana. I'll get in touch with you, but I'm acknowledging Desiree and Andrea. Please, the rest of the audience, please, we need at least 15 pledges by next week in order to keep Politics 101 on this platform and on broadcast TV for those who are not able to come on to Facebook but who want to see our program on broadcast TV. It's been shown on Channel 9. Please make your contribution, however small. Please do it via Cash App or what's the other thing? The PayPal. If you don't have those means, please contact me and I'll tell you how to make your donation, however small it is. 1130. Gentlemen, we've had a very good discussion tonight on the question of lands. We've touched on agriculture. It is extremely important. Going forward, are you all optimistic? Are you optimistic? Beyond just said that it's a myth that Black people are not going back to the land, that they are in many regards. Are you all optimistic that we can keep this thing and get ourselves back into agriculture? That oil is coming, oil wealth is coming, but as I said at some point in the program, that oil is coming, oil will stop. That's Trinidad, right? But at the end of the day, we have to feed ourselves and we have to have land to build our homes and to engage in whatever economic interventions we want to engage in. We African people, in my estimation, we have to become rich. And I'm not talking about being capitalist, right? I'm talking about get money so that you can send your children to school, that you can live comfortably, that you can get the basic health care that you need, and you can live as normal human beings. We have to be able to generate money. We work in the public service. We do all those other jobs that service the country. But we also have to engage in entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship gives you control over your earnings. So I'm not saying to people, don't be teachers anymore, don't be nurses, or don't be doctors and lawyers and professors and so on, and mechanics. We need those people. But we also need to earn money that we have control over. Simpson, do you think that we can make it? Simpson de Silva, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yes. Are you optimistic that we can?
Oh, I'm very optimistic. I think we should seize the opportunity to set out a model that is second to none in the world. One, we are few in numbers. Two, we have a lot of resources. And three, the money that is coming. We need to be pressuring the government, pressuring private sector, pressuring civil society, pressuring ourselves to get involved in the holistic development of our communities and have the people in the diaspora as part of the foundation to cause this to happen. In other words, we just see the example of the 120 tractors for the Amerindian community. Mm-hmm. Where are we mobilizing for 112 tractors for people of African descent communities? The question is, can that happen? Yes, it could. Do we need it? Yes, we do. But in addition to that, we must look at things from land, agriculture, environment, and the entire food system. We look at the entire value chain now. And when we're dealing with the space, we deal with it in that sense, prosperity. I like what you said, money or wealth. But I think you're hinging on the question of holistic prosperity. We must be able to satisfy our basic needs, at least feed ourselves, house ourselves, clothe ourselves. Let's go back to the basics. Currently, who is clothing us? From the underwear to everything is coming from China. Should that continue? No. We should be producing our things. We should be producing our handbags, our everything. That is what was envisioned. So I am saying, let us go for the full 9 yards. Let's go for everything now. Let's have it as a university project or a school project. It's less than, Guyana is less than 1 million people. And when you come down to people of African descent, it's a small amount. So let us take it on, engage our best and brightest locally and internationally, and let us bring it under the a special 2024 agenda, because that's when the decade comes to an end. And with places like Ipology, let us make it happen. The point is, it can. It takes within 6 months, 6 weeks, max 9 months, and 3 years to cause things to happen in agriculture. Let us be very, very serious and do it. That's my position to us. Let
Thank
us
you very much.
mobilize our people and get it done now. Enough is enough.
Dion Abrams, optimistic?
You know, as I listen to Simpson, I think of a tragedy that we face in terms of we manage our own affairs and how we treat with our own people when we have the opportunity to elevate them to positions of comfort and so on. In the rate project that we talked about, for each of the communities that were part of that project, there were certain prescriptions for the continued development of those communities. Buxton, Ithaca, BB Triumph, Mocha. Among those would have been an excavator, a bulldozer, a tractor with all the implements for plowing and so on. Those things came to the village. They should have remained in the village. They should have been left here for the village to manage. They were never left, and they disappeared under the APNU AFC administration. And now the PPP is here. We don't know where they are. We don't know if they're ever going to be returned to the village in any way. I'm certain that they will not be. Now, the PPP is in office. They're just giving these tractors to these Amerindian communities. We had the opportunity to leave those things there, and they were not left. All right. And so we now are faced with issues of having to pay to get cultivation done and all of these things. It's sad.
Yeah.
All right. It's a tragedy. The other thing is, David, I want to talk about is, and it's something that we got to talk about very deeply, is what happens at the land registry. There is in that place agents who are basically part of the process of stripping African people of their lands and so on. All right. You only hear a big hullabaloo when one of Jack Dio's friends, got caught up in it and he didn't even know how somebody else got transported. But it has been happening to us on a massive scale. All right. And nobody has been doing anything about it. So we are basically, at a disadvantage in every way. And there's a lot of cleaning up to do. We have to be vigilant about our own affairs and pursue avenues for ensuring that what has been happening does not continue to happen. The giveaway of land in Guyana, I mean, I spoke with Trevor Ben on the Walter Rodney Groundlings program only recently. And you get the understanding that under the PPP administration, that land really for them is for one set of people, right? They may push in a few people who might not look like them and just to camouflage or to, some cosmetic decoration. But it's a giveaway for them, right? And we have to find ways of getting land, all right, outside our communities so that we can expand our communities and engage in activities. A lot of the lands that are in possession of other people are lands that they squatted on.
Yeah.
They never bought those lands. From Annandale right through to Success, going right through to all of those lands are squat lands. But the minute, and the PPP ignores them. Prior to the election, they were squatters at the site of the is one of the LBI or one of those a strip of land outside the playground level. And they went there and so on. And the minute that people decide that they're going to take a piece of land, you know, look at what they did at Success. They flooded them out and they sought all kinds of means of getting rid of them while they would ignore others who were engaged in the same practice. So
Abrams, WPA executive member, Dr. Simpson himself, I think we've lost Lincoln Lewis. I want to thank you all for coming on tonight, and I'm sure that you all have shed a lot of light on this question of land. And Dion and Kidaki Amsterdam and myself and Takuma Ogunsi will be going to the quarantine this Sunday. I think we're going to Kilturn. If you are in one of those quarantine communities and you would like us to stop by, please get in touch with Kidaki Amsterdam and make the arrangements with him. I want to thank Dennis for answering the call and making his donation already. So we need 14 more donations. I'm in a begging mood tonight. 14 more donations to pay our bills. So please emulate what Dennis has done and make your small donation to keep this program going. And if you have a boat or boats, or you know anybody who got a couple of boats that they're not using and that they can part with, the Buxton farmers need boat to bring their produce out from the back dam. Please contact me or Kidaki Amsterdam on Buxtonian Morning Time if you have that kind of resource at your disposal. The farmers there in Buxton would certainly appreciate that help. So once again, thank those of you who have donated. Thank those of you who will make your donation. Thank you in advance. And next week, as I said on Tuesday, we are going to do a program on Haiti. By then, hopefully, we'll know more about what went down in Haiti there. That operation looked like it was an advanced operation. Apparently, I saw a video that they have caught one of the mercenaries. They were parading him through the streets of Port-au-Prince. So by Tuesday, we'll have much more information and we'll be able to have a discussion about what is happening in Haiti and the implications for us in Guyana. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I see my brother Compton Older is on. Compton. It's nice having you on. Lynette Scotland, you are a regular. Thank you all for Desiree Emmanuel. I recognize that name as regulars. Thank you all for always keeping our company here on Politics 101.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.